Okay, so getting things all set up here. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, know that I have a Facebook group and it's called IEP 504 and more. Well, actually, no, take that back. I should call my IEP group that. No, so my IEP group is called IEP/504 Assistance. And so that is the name of my IEP group. Please stop by if you have not and check out the group on Facebook. This is where I help provide kind of group advocacy, right? So most advocacy models, what they do is you work with an advocate one-on-one and you pay a minimum of $80 an hour. It's very expensive. And what I'm trying to do is to look at providing advocacy in a whole new way. So I want to provide advocacy kind of as a group, in a group setting, and basically just charge people a whole lot less. So this is what I do in the IEP group. There I provide advocacy help free in the evenings. You can also join me on AESA.group's website. And there, if you purchase a bronze membership, which the yearly membership is only $25 a year, if you join there, you can join me on the forums during the day, as that is where you can find me during the daytime hours. So, I got all kinds of neat stuff to share, but let's start off because I know the IEP group has had quite a few questions come in, and there's been several questions that have really kind of rotated around. I mean, I was noticing these questions are really kind of rotating around the idea of the least restrictive environment and supplemental aids and services. Now, these are very important concepts. If you are not familiar with them, it's really good to read the law or to find the information in your state that discusses least restrictive environment and supplemental aids and services. So for least restrictive environment, I think most people they're advocates for inclusion, but they don't understand, in IDEA, there is no law that specifically speaks to inclusion itself. What it says instead is your child is supposed to be educated in the least restrictive environment. So the least restrictive environment there's the federal regulation. And let me get here to that, actually. I was just looking at the definition of child with a disability, which is another very interesting and important topic for people to understand how it is different medically and educationally, right, these diagnoses. So if your child has medical autism, that doesn't automatically confer educational eligibility of autism, all right? So they don't go quite hand in hand. Your child has to meet the educational definition of what is autism, educationally speaking. So I know parents get really frustrated with that, and it's, I think, very unfortunate. Let's see. All right. So least restrictive environment, and for those of you who are watching, I am going to leave the link here for what is least restrictive environment as far as the federal law, okay? So the federal law basically states that a child should be educated in the environment that is the least restrictive. So starting at the general education, because there's something called continuum of services. So you want to start at the least restrictive environment, which is the general education system. And then you have special education classes, like a resource class or something along those lines. And then you have more time and resource than you are spending in general education. And then as you continue to progress along the continuum, you get to where you're in a full inclusion class. Then you can be placed into a school that is, say, like a behavior school, so that's more restrictive, right? And then the most restrictive setting is homebound and hospital. So these are the children who are in a hospital setting or who have medical issues that cause them or need them to be educated at home by the public school. So again, that is considered the continuum of services. And let me leave you with, because the law calls it's the continuum of alternate placements. So the idea is that your child should be educated in the least restrictive environment. So that would be the general education classroom. And you're supposed to educate the child in the general education classroom using all supplemental aids and services that are reasonably possible considering the circumstance. And then the team should consider a more restrictive placement, but not until you get to that point, right? So what are supplemental aids and services? It can be a whole host of things. So one of the most common things that are asked for when somebody is looking for a supplemental aid and service is literally an aide, a paraprofessional. And a paraprofessional is considered a supplemental aid and service. So I often hear parents complain that their child is in this general education classroom and they go to the school and they say, I need a paraprofessional for my child. And the school says, no, it's actually more restrictive to give your child a paraprofessional in the general education classroom than it is to put them in a more restrictive setting. So we're talking like spending, like full inclusion class, for instance. That's wrong. And don't let them tell you that. It's really odd. And I don't even know how they can even say that. So it is less restrictive to keep the child in the general education classroom and give them the supplemental aids and services, that paraprofessional. So again, I posted the links to the federal law concerning this, just so you know, in case you have any questions. Because like I said, this has come up a few times. Oh, and actually, let me post one more, which is, so what exactly are supplemental aids and services? And what's really funny is the federal law really does not define this well. So for those of you who are in my IEP group, if you are interested in kind of learning more information about what is considered supplemental aids and services, let me know. I have several good resources that I can kind of point you to help explain what they are. And then let me get this bit of law here for you guys. Now, do keep in mind, I am open to questions this evening, of course. So if you have questions, please let me know, and I will do the best I can to answer any questions that you may have. Let's see. And then I want to say, so far, I haven't seen any questions. So I will start off kind of with things that have been sort of going on in the group. We'll come to that one in a minute. So really, there have been some very interesting posts recently in the group. So we'll start up here at the top. So one lady, she posted a message that she had received from, I believe it was the child's aide, who said that they had permission to sit on the floor of a school bus. So just so you know, that is never okay. Not now, not ever. I don't know why they would do that. I know it is a safety hazard. Your child sitting on the bus, on the floor of the bus, potentially could be harmed more by, if the car happened to or the bus happened to get into an accident. Also, it's a safety issue. What if a fire breaks out on the bus, right? Then they're blocking the way for other people to be able to exit the bus. So I know for certain, though I never could quite drill down enough to, because I didn't spend a ton of time kind of researching this, but I did spend enough time because the lady, Jessica, she's out of New York. And I found enough information to find the laws to kind of give to her, right, to help her out and to kind of let her fight back, along with some information, because the person who allowed this, who was driving the bus, turns out to be the head of the Department of Transportation for the school district. So again, super surprised that they did this and this was allowed, and it proceeded to happen under his watch. So even more reason, I think, to go ahead and then file a complaint. So where would you file the complaint? So in New York, you would file the complaint with not only the New York State Department of Education, but you're also going to want to file the complaint potentially with the New York State Department of Transportation. So one of those two agencies, and I would think definitely the New York Department of Education would be right on the situation. And I was able to find a contact number. So hopefully they will call and we will know some answers tomorrow. But yes, just be aware, even if the school bus has no seat belts, it does not matter. Your child is still, they're supposed to sit in a seat. This is where they should be. And if they are sitting in the dirty floor of the school bus, that is not appropriate. Ever. Never, ever appropriate. Okay, so let's see. Next question here. It says, how many people submit parental concerns in writing prior to the IEP meeting? Okay, so I don't know if you're aware, but you absolutely can submit what your parental concerns are that you feel like weren't really addressed, or the school sort of maybe partially addressed it, but you don't feel like they addressed it in such a way that this isn't going to be an issue again that you're going to have to revisit. So if any of these things happen, then know that you absolutely can write your parental letter of concern. This information should be included into your child's IEP. A lot of districts have gone electronic and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have a way to include it. Yes, they do, and it can be done. So the information at a minimum should be like attached to your child's IEP that goes into your child's cumulative folder. Now you can get access to your child's cumulative folder by doing a FERPA request. And again, if you don't know how to do that, please let me know, or come join me in my IEP/504 assistance group. And there I will be able to explain to you kind of the procedures in your state on how to go through this FERPA request. So that's one way. Another way is often you can give the school this information in advance, and then they'll just take it and they can copy and paste it into their electronic IEP. Also, if it's just a paper, they can literally just attach your information to the paper copy. So, there's no excuse as to why a school wouldn't address this and go ahead and let you have your parental input into the IEP. Also, don't forget too, by law, right, you as a parent are an active participant in the IEP team. And I think parents often sort of forget that because they feel, one, intimidated, right? Because you're sitting in front of like this whole table full of people who, are credentialed. Often many of the people in the department who attend these IEP meetings have master's degrees or doctorate degrees. And I'll tell you what, don't let them intimidate you. Don't do it. So you just tell them what it is that you need to tell them, and realize you have the PhD in your child. So no matter what they think they know, you know your child best, and that's what you're there to do. You're there to advocate for your child. So don't let them intimidate you out of that, okay? All right, let's see. So one of the ladies here said, Courtney was talking about she's like currently in the evaluation process. And she's like, I swear they're trying to get me to quit doing this IEP testing, because what they're doing is they're asking like a whole bunch of medical questions. So just be aware, as part of kind of this, psychoeducational testing the school does, especially the initial testing, the school wants that information because they're looking at how your child has developed kind of up to that point. So I think it's okay to fill out the form and sort of address what their questions are. But do know that just because they are asking you for medical information, you do not have to do that. You do not have to sign like HIPAA release forms, okay, and then turn it over to the school. Because at that point, the school then can just take like whatever it is that they are looking for, and just kind of pilfer through your children's information. And that's really kind of the last thing that you want. because there's no telling what exactly they may get and then how they may interpret it. So often what I do, if the school is that adamant, they're wanting information from the doctor themselves. What I do is I go to the doctor and I'm like, hey, the school, because I talked to them already, and they said they want, XYZ information. And so then I asked the doctor, hey, will you take XYZ information and just put that only on your letterhead and then send it over to the school? And then I sign a HIPAA waiver for the doctor to release that information. Now, the only other way in which I would do this is that I would take that HIPAA release that the school gives me, and then I would be very, very specific on the information that they are allowed to request. So again, you still need to have this conversation with either the school nurse or the psychologist and ask them very specifically like what it is that you're looking for. That is all that you write. Sorry, kitty cat. That is all that you write on that release form. You just specifically that information, and then limit the window, because there should be a date. Normally when you sign them, they're automatically assumed to be a year unless you fill in a date that's something less than a year. So make sure that you take the time to really kind of read over the HIPAA requests that you're being asked to do, and then fill out the document, including filling out, like for the school, I give them 2 weeks. That's it. They get 14 days. If they don't request the information by then, they're going to have to come back to me and request the information then. So just know, yes, you can give them the information, but you can give it to them in a limited way. You don't have to give them like unfettered access to your children's medical information. And not only that, I would highly encourage you, please do not give them unfettered access to your child's medical information. I think that's just a terrible idea. So Jen asked a question today she said, today my 7-year-old went on a whale watching trip, and that she had already had a discussion with the principal because her child does have a one-on-one aide for them. And so she had confirmed with the principal, hey, is this aide going on the field trip? And they said yes. So unfortunately, I'm not sure that Jen got that information in writing. So remember, one of the most important things that we can do when we deal with the school district is please go and get everything written down. You must have it in writing, right? If it's not written down, it never happened. So the principal said that the aide was planning on going, and that was what was supposed to happen. But then she got a call today when her son was on the trip and found out that no. And her son had not only not had her aide or had his aide, but had eloped from the field trip. And so it stopped everyone from enjoying the field trip because they just brought everything to a complete halt. Her husband had to rush and go go find their son and get him and bring him home. And I think it's terrible. I mean, I feel really bad for everyone because I know her son was super excited to go. I mean, who wouldn't be excited to go? I would be excited to go. I've never gone whale watching. But that's the thing though, right? Like if he has an aide in his IEP, the aide should have been there. And they don't say why the aide was not in attendance. I would want to know that information, Jen, and I don't think I mention that in my comments, but I would want to know, why wasn't the aide there, especially when the principal told you that the aide would be there. So if the aide was out because the aide was sick, then really what should have happened is any other school adult personnel should have been pulled, and then they should have functioned as the aide for your son, or they should have called and told you in advance that the aide was not going to be there, and then let it be your call as to what happened after that. So this is really upsetting because obviously it's a huge safety concern when a child elopes. So I just, I feel really bad about the situation as a whole. But one, if the aide was out for some reason, say they were sick, right? It was a reason they couldn't really be helped. then as I said, somebody else should have in the school should have been assigned to step in. Now, if they weren't, really what I would look to do is to have some kind of plan put into place. So if the aide is not present, like who is our next designee who's supposed to be there for filling in for the aide? Often many people forget in an IEP, if your child does have issues with elopement or others just kind of being safe out in the community, it's super important to look at creating some kind of safety plan or something like that to have in the IEP in case of an emergency. This can be anywhere from the aide calling out sick and we have a field trip today to, what is supposed to happen during a fire drill, during, an active shooter event at the school. What is supposed to happen with your child? Who's in charge? And then what are they going to be doing with your child? And I think, again, these are some really important questions to ask and some really important things to address, and make sure you put into your child's IEP if your child does have these safety issues. So just be aware. Let's see. Okay, so my next question here is from Julie. And so Julie had mentioned that she had an extended school year determination meeting this coming Thursday for her son is in 10th grade, and that he's been at a 4th grade math level for 4 years. So the school has been kind of giving her a hard time about doing extended school year services. So do you know, because a lot of people aren't aware, the school will just tell you for extended school year that all there is regression and recruitment, and that's kind of the only factor that they look for. So one thing is, do you know the school should have data to prove there's not an issue with regression and recruitment? And if they don't, that's kind of one way to sort of get them, right? Because you ask, hey, where's the data to show my child doesn't have this regression and recruitment, if you think that is a problem for your child. Now, if regression and recruitment isn't the problem for your child, do they have other criteria that your child could qualify under? So often, not in every state, but most states, they have a list of criteria, anywhere between 8 to 10 reasons usually a child can qualify for extended school year services. So do know that, you absolutely can probably get your child qualified for extended school year services under one of those, 8 or 9 eligibility categories. So it is worth looking, and also realize too that extended school year services doesn't just mean summer school that's already set up. No, extended school year services should be specifically addressing some of the goals or other things that your child is working on, merging skills or something along those lines. So all of these things kind of rolled together, right? You need to make sure that you look at all of these different criteria and then make the determination on whether your child needs extended school year services. And again, if you need help in making that determination, please let me know, and I will help find what your state's, extended school year criteria is, and kind of help you maybe get that extended school year service in place. Okay, so let's see. So actually, I brought up a question in the group, and she was talking about her son having eligibility for an IEP, I do believe. And she initially said that he received a diagnosis of ADHD. But now as he's gotten a little bit older, they notice that he has anxiety, and they now think that he has some kind of disruptive behavior disorder. And just know, schools are interested in your child's medical information. They're interested in essentially what is your child's, eligibilities potentially for special education based on their medical information. but it's based on the medical information, right? It doesn't mean that it's set on the medical information. So we kind of had this discussion earlier about autism in particular, because this is the one I hear the most, and that is somebody will have this medical eligibility of autism, and then when they take it to the school says, no, we don't see that. We're going to give your child an IEP, but under OHI usually, or speech and language impairment. I could think those are kind of the two biggest ones that I hear children classified who have autism, you know, for special education, they're classified under OHI or speech. So the difference is that medical looks at the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, 5th edition. And the DSM-5, they list the criteria to, you know, make that diagnostic eligibility medically. For educational purposes, what they're looking at is IDEA and what IDEA says and how IDEA defines these eligibility categories. They have 13 in the federal law, and realize your state can make additional categories, okay? They can't limit, but they can kind of better define or refine eligibility categories. So there may be more than 13 eligibility categories in your state, because I know here in Arizona we have 15. There are other states that have more than the federal's, what IDEA federally calls for is 13. But they're looking at, what does that say? What is that definition? And then does your child exhibit these things in the educational environment? Now realize, like in the purpose of IDEA, it talks about a child being made where they can live independently and be employed. So they shouldn't just be looking at the educational environment. They should be looking at the community and elsewhere and how your child behaves. Often they don't, and then it's kind of a big struggle and a long hill fight to get them to recognize these other places where your child may exhibit behaviors, but it's important or relevant to your child's eligibility. Hopefully, though, your child exhibits enough, right, so that your child can get an IEP. And then once they have an IEP, then you're given rights under IDEA. Once you have rights under IDEA, then you got a little bit of leverage. So, and also realize that by case law, okay, so I've seen case law out of various states, like it's different district court of appeals, okay. What they all kind of have said is it doesn't really matter what your child's eligibility is on their IEP, right? So they may have autism, but they have speech as their eligibility on their IEP. And that's okay as long as they're receiving FAPE. So that's a free, appropriate public education, FAPE. So as long as they're getting the things they need to get a free, appropriate public education, then the school has met their obligations and there's nothing more that they have to do. So don't, if your child is sort of like miscategorized under IDEA and you're not happy about it, I understand. And just realize that placement should not, eligibility should not dictate services. Now, I'm not saying that's not what happens, because honestly, I see that happen quite a bit. So just know, yes, it does happen. But hopefully it's not happening. If it is, then it's worth fighting potentially to try to change your child's eligibility, or just to go ahead and fight for the things that your child needs, you know, whatever kind of services that your child isn't getting, but they do need. And so, you know, now's the time to go in and kind of fight for those. Anyways, so these are kind of like my ideas I've had over some of these questions that I've had in the last day here. And I was wondering if anyone had any questions this evening. So hi, Susie. Thank you for joining. Terry. Hi, Terry. And she said, I need SMART goal training. So yes, ma'am, I am working on putting things together to help parents understand what exactly are SMART goals and to be able to write SMART goals and be able to basically, right, just feel like you have more education, more say, that you can argue more knowledgeably with the people who are sitting across from the table with you. So I am currently working on that. Terry is helping me to develop that. And Terry, I do need to get with you so we can continue working on putting together these training modules. I'm very excited to get that put together. So Jackie joined. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for attending. All right. Let's see. So one of the things I did want to bring up, AESA, which is Arizona Exceptional Students Association, it is my nonprofit agency organization. And we just finished updating our website. So there's still a few bugs and glitches, but it's much better than it used to be. We do have a promo code as AESA April, you can see right there behind my head, for the quarterly bronze membership. And that gets you a 30-day free trial to go and try out the new website. And I'm excited because the new website has a lot of new features, including getting up, it has the podcast. So I'm still working on that. I had to sit down and learn the software first. So it does have the podcast, and it also has a forum, and that is the place, like I said, if during the day you have questions, please come find me on the forum, because that is more or less where I will be, because I do have a lot of projects going on, and I'm trying to step away from Facebook just a little bit, so I'm not obsessed on Facebook 24 hours a day, because that's my feeling. I want to be on here and answer all your questions. But then I find out my house is filthy and I need to spend more time working with my children. So it's been a bit tough. So I need to kind of balance that out. And this is my effort in order to do that. So if you need help and you need help right away, please come to AESA's forum and please post your questions. Okay. Also, I was really excited and kind of when I figured this out. So one of the other things we have going on AESA is the Reid Scholarship. And the idea behind the Reid Scholarship is to provide a scholarship, a $3,000 scholarship to parents in order for them to retain an attorney to help push their case to due process. So as far as I know, only one other state does this, and that's Connecticut. And I think all the other states have been gypped, and we need that fixed. So I have rolled out a Reid Scholarship here in Arizona, and I hope by next year I will be able to open that up to everyone in the United States. If just, if every active person who is in my IEP group, because actively in any given week, I have a little over 4,000 people who check into my IEP 504 group. And if all of you just bought a bronze membership, which the yearly price is just $25 a year, that's it. Do you realize I could fund 10,000 Reid scholarships? That's mind-blowing to me. I would be so excited to do that. But yeah, I would be able to fund 10,000 Reid scholarships, because for every $10,000 in membership revenue that's generated, 30% of that directly goes into funding the Reid scholarship. So that money alone right there would allow me to help 10,000 families take their case to due process. And I think that would just be amazing. So I really hope, like I said, if you haven't considered it, please do consider picking up a bronze membership at AESA. And that's aesa.group, by the way. But yeah, so I really hope that, like I said, you do consider it and realize too that we are a certified nonprofit. We are a 501c3 organization. And so therefore, any money that you do give to us is also tax deductible. So kind of an added benefit. Anyways, so Susie asked a question. She said, can a school do an FBA and then discuss the BIP and not implement it? Why would you even go through all that effort? I mean, there's effort that goes into that. I mean, there's the FBA. To do the FBA, somebody theoretically had to undergo training, or they are an ABA therapist. And so they took the time to watch your child and to make recommendations and to do things. And then they sit and discuss the BIP and put all of that together and put all that work into it, and then are implementing it. So, and she said they aren't going to implement it because they want the child placed in a different school. Well, again, this kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier about, that you're supposed to have like supplemental aids and services. Well, part of this means we should have tried everything that we can within reason to keep the child within their current placement. Okay, so this is what I was talking about in the very beginning of this video, which is least restrictive environment and supplemental aids and services. So a child, when they're having behavior issues, they are supposed to have an FBA done, so functional behavior assessment, and then the BIP done. And, they're kind of pulling that information from the FBA to make the BIP, the behavior intervention plan. So once they get that done, they then are supposed to implement it, because without implementing it, how do you know if it's effective? And if it is effective, then there's no reason to change the child's placement, right? So I think where you best stand an argument about them not implementing it because they're wanting to move your child to a different school, then what you're going to do is you're going to argue about least restrictive environment, because moving your child from their home school, the school that is located near you, right, is a problem. And it is more restrictive than keeping them at the home school where they're supposed to be. So this is, again, where you're going to argue that least restrictive environment. And in the thread, I actually posted the law about least restrictive environment. And that's what you're going to want to stand on in your arguments with the school. So Terry was just saying, join, it helped to do a kick IEP. So nothing was denied, not even an aide. I know Terry was very successful. So she did a great job in putting together her parental concern letter. Basically, it was just kind of, a parental concern letter / agenda for her meeting. And I was able to come in and assist her with that and kind of backfill everything that she needed with laws and regulations and her agenda, so that, there was kind of this legal basis for the things that she was requesting. But everything that she was requesting was quite reasonable. And that's all part of the reason why they gave in, essentially, and gave Terry what it was that she was needing for her child. So, all right. And I was going to say, I don't have any other questions that I see at the moment. Let me see. Is anyone else commenting? Sometimes I forget to slide the slider down. Okay, so Susie said, thank you. I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, please let me know. And as I said, I am trying to step away from Facebook a little bit, but I am absolutely in that group. I do kind of watch what's posted, but I don't kind of take time to sit down and answer questions until the evening time when things have settled down in my house and I can sit with my laptop and, answer your questions and be able to share links and references with you guys. So, and Terry is saying that she's going to the new school tomorrow. So that's good. You're making progress. Yay. I love to hear that. Okay. Makes me happy when my parents are successful, right? Because that is really what we're all striving for. We're all striving to be the best advocate for our child, whether that's medically, we're trying to be the best medical advocate for our child, because many of us have medically complex children. And then if not, right, educationally. I mean, as a special needs parent, you feel like you just fight and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. It never stops. It's one thing or another. But realize you're not alone. Many people are in the same situation. I've been in the same situation. I'm still fighting to get my son Joseph like a potty seat for our home. And it has been a heck of a time for me to do that, even though my son has cerebral palsy and he's like really tiny. He has what they consider idiopathic short stature. So he's barely 4 feet tall at 11 years old. And he has a very difficult time sitting on a toilet. And it's dangerous for him because he has literally fallen off the toilet in our home. So, I'm struggling trying to get him the things that he needs to be able to be independent. And it shouldn't be that much of a fight, but it is. And all I can tell you is persevere, right? That's it. Persevere. Don't give up. It's okay to step back and regroup, take a breath, have a glass of wine, have a bit of vodka. That's what I do. Just something kind of, have a good cry, pull yourself. That's what I was doing last night too. Is stress and anxiety out. had a bit of a cry, pulled myself together last night, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to go. So just know you're not the only one. You know, even people look at me and think I have all my stuff together. I don't have my stuff together. You know, I'm just persistent. I don't give up. So don't give up. All right. So Terry said, since my case, the principal is not only taking phone calls for other parents. Gee, I wonder why. Why would the principal want to take phone calls only? Well, that would be because, right, we have nothing in writing. If we have nothing in writing, then what do you have to hold them against or hold against them, right? Because nothing's written down. But that's okay. So let me tell you how you combat that situation. So what you do is, in some states, you are allowed to record. Now, be very careful about this, because it's a different law, recording over the phone versus recording in person. So that's potentially wiretapping, depending on what state you're in. So again, be very careful and make sure you know your state law. So if you can't record over the phone, then what you do is take notes when you're sitting there on the phone with the person. Okay, so make sure you stop, like grab any sheet of paper, grab whatever you pencil, and then start taking notes. As soon as the phone call is done, if you're able, and if not, then as soon as you are able, make it to a computer, write it all out, every bit of it, write every bit of your conversation out and send it to the person who wouldn't, like write you an email. So you send it to them instead in an email and say, from our conversation, this is what I got out of our conversation. These are the main points. This is what's going to happen. If I'm wrong, then I want you to write me back and let me know where I made an error. So that way it puts the onus on them to write you back and let you know if you're wrong. And really, that's going to be your best way to try to document something for somebody who doesn't want to be pinned down, is to go ahead and you're kind of doing like your own version of a prior written notice, right? So you're writing it from your end and giving that information. So Jessica said, are you going to videotape the conference? So, that's a good question. I'm hoping to videotape the conference. So I'm working on that. Like many other things, I have a lot of things in the air at the moment. So yes, I do hope to videotape the conference. And if I do manage to do that and get everything done, then I will definitely let people know that we will have the audio version for it, or a video version of the conference. And I will see what I can do. I'm not sure that I would be able to necessarily have that completely for free, but I can keep it at a very low price. So I can absolutely do that. But anyways, I'm working on that. So great question, Jessica, because yes, that's one of the many things that I sort of have in the works, so to speak. Let's see. Oh, and she goes, Terry says, and they're not returning any parent emails either. Well, that's great. However, under AESA, the school is obligated to communicate with parents. So I don't know if you realize that. So you might be able to leverage that information. And I have some links in the group that are discussing that. So do be aware they are required to communicate with you on some level. They can't just ignore you. So I find that really fascinating that they would even contemplate doing that. So I'm sorry, like my nose is killing me here. The wind in Arizona has been blowing like nuts, and I am so allergic to everything outside. Oh, I'm dying. All right. So, and Terry also said, but the Board of Education did allow me to talk in front of them, all 16 of them. You know what? That's great. So often the Board of Education will try to block parents from speaking in front of the board. So good for you that you were able to make that happen. I love that. That's just amazing. Let's see. So Feltonia said, I just spoke to my son's principal and sent a recap email. Perfect. That is exactly what you need to be doing. So again, any kind of verbal conversation. Matter of fact, I had just recently told a parent who lived here in Arizona to do this, because in Arizona, we are a one-party consent state. So in an in-person conversation, I can go in and I can set record on my phone. So like I told them, as soon as you get onto school grounds, before you even exit out of your vehicle, take your phone and hit record and start a recording. And so you just speak into it, saying like, that my name is Michelle Harris. I'm giving consent to record any conversation that is had with me at the school, blah, 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 on this date, and then exit your car. And so that way, if any of the school staff try to waylay you and have a conversation with you, you now have this recording. And again, please be careful and make sure you know what your state's recording laws are, okay? Because you can get into a lot of trouble making recordings if your state does not allow it. But it is a great way in case they do come and kind of waylay you, right? And so even if your state doesn't a two-party consent, that doesn't mean that you couldn't necessarily record the conversation. But what you would do is you would use that recording to go home. And then when you sit down and you type up that email that you're going to send them, you can say, in our conversation, we said, and you said, and this said, and whatever. Now, if they challenge you and say, like, I didn't say that, okay, that's where you can run into a problem, because it's not like you would be able to submit your recording if your state doesn't allow you to record. Okay, so it has no legal basis. Or if you did confess to having it, there may be a legal basis, but it wouldn't be a positive one for you. So you don't want to do that. So just be very, very careful in what you're doing. Okay. But it is something to consider if you keep having this problem where the school is sort of trying to stop you or waylay you, and they're trying to have these conversations sort of off the record or whatever to keep basically a paper trail documentation from happening. But you need that documentation if you need to go to mediation or due process. So I think it's well worth it to take the time. And I know that we had an attorney in the group. Actually, we have a couple of them, but I know one of the attorneys in the group, her area of expertise is not special education, but she's an attorney and she knows how to take notes. And that was one of the things that she mentioned was her school hated her. And it was because she was a really good note taker. And she sat there and she took excellent notes. And so when they came to argue with her, over prior written notice or other things, I mean, she was just slamming them hard because she took really good notes and she had really good documentation. She created a really good paper trail. So that's what you need to do too. You want to create that paper trail. All right. So Becky had asked, what is ESA? Excellent question. So that is only applicable if you live in Arizona, and I think Washington, D.C. And then there are a few other states who are kind of rolling out a similar program where for Arizona, it's called the Empowerment Scholarship Account. And so ESA is what I use to educate my children at home. Now, Becky, if you mean AESA, which is the name here behind me, that's Arizona Exceptional Students Association, and that is the name of my nonprofit. So I'm not sure which one you were talking about. But ESA in Arizona is a school voucher program, and that's what I utilize for my children. And how I wind up homeschooling my children, they are technically considered public school students who are educated at home. And I am the superintendent of my school district of 3 children, and I am also the head teacher. So and principal. So when I have a meeting with myself and I'm talking to myself complaining about my children, that is me having a parent-teacher conference. So, all right. So Becky says, why does the board block parents? Well, that's because they don't want parents to show up at the board, which are public meetings, and then complain about the schools and the things the schools aren't doing correctly. So it's not uncommon. And I think one of the most outrageous things that I had seen, now this was not in relationship to a parent speaking out, but a teacher who was speaking out about school funding. And they actually had a security officer at that meeting like force the woman out of the building and then wound up arresting her, and it made national news. So you will see things like that happen. I mean, there's some crazy stuff that can go on at the school board meetings. We just watched the one that's local to us, which is Cartwright School District. And Cartwright School District's last board meeting where they were arguing over teacher pay, and there was like a whole argument about the superintendent of the school district was fired and let go before the end of the school year, and like nobody could even give a good reason why. And then one of the board members had like some kind of melodrama thing and talking about wanting to file harassment to the person who is now the well, they were like standing in for the superintendent since there wasn't one for the district anymore. It was the most drama-filled thing I've ever seen. It was just shy of a Jerry Springer episode. And I know I just dated myself saying that, but you get my drift, right? Like it was really crazy. And I was really shocked that this is a public meeting. It's recorded. I could watch it on my local news, on my like local access channel. And I was really surprised at the melodrama that went on. And you can see things like that. And then parents can get really worked up, and you can have small groups of parents come in and cause a lot of drama too. And it's that kind of thing when parents are getting together and they're speaking out to the school board and they're saying, hey, you know what, your special education services in our district are terrible because they're underfunded and we can't get the aids and services that we need. And we have our local schools telling us, that's all your fault because they don't have any funds. That is all sorts of drama that the school board doesn't want you saying, especially when you say things like you don't have funds, because that's not an appropriate reason to ever give anyone along the way. So your local school, your school district, anywhere along the way, they should never, ever say, we can't do something because of lack of funds, because federal law would still consider that a denial of FAPE. They figured you should have plenty of funds, that you should be able to take care of these things. So no, they don't want you to say those things out loud. But that's why I try to urge people. And I know it's really difficult because, again, myself included, right? I am a parent. I have special needs children. I have surviving quadruplets. So that means I have 3 children who have special needs. All of them have autism. And then all of them have a variety of, kind of disability issues. And I'm really busy. So it's hard for me to feel like I can participate in kind of policy or active, politics and government and that kind of thing. But honestly, it really is one of the best and most powerful things that you can do as a parent is to get involved in your local politics. Now that I've formed a nonprofit, it's even more difficult for me because as a nonprofit, one of my federal obligations to keep my nonprofit status is not to be a political whatever. I can't come out and like for or against anything politically. So it's a little difficult for me. And so I try to stay out unless it's just me personally voicing my opinion. But do know, I think it's really important to be active. It's important to go and attend your school board meetings. It's important to go and talk to your state representatives. Your state representative sometimes can be your best friend. They are often very active and work very hard for the people who are in their district. So contact them. And then, like I had just mentioned recently, I don't remember offhand what it was that had happened in the group, but I had mentioned to someone, like one of the things you can do, so a lot of people aren't aware you can even do this, but if you do have a problem with the state Department of Education, or you're having a problem even with your local school and you've tried to resolve it, you've kind of gone up the chain of command, you've talked to the superintendent of your school district and you're still not getting anywhere. What you can do is sometimes talk to your state representatives, and you can ask them to do something called a congressional inquiry, and they can look into incidences for you. So I don't know if you're aware of that, but I have done that before, and I did it once for my children's Social Security disability because I was having problems with Social Security. So there's another mechanism. There are other things that you can do. There are other places that you can go and complain. So just be aware that you can do these things. All right. So Terry said, I filled out paperwork at the monthly board meetings and they had to listen to me because my son is a minor and they took us behind closed doors. So it was a closed door session, couldn't see everything that went on. So that was part of the reason they let her speak. But during the public meetings, like, they don't like people speaking. They don't want the crowd to get riled up. They don't want other people to know what it is that you're complaining about. So Fultonia said, if they never answer emails, will that help you in due process? Well, I don't know if it necessarily helps, but it doesn't hurt because they're not communicating with you. So if they aren't and you think you're heading to due process, you can ask for mediation and try to use a mediator. And I think that potentially could help too, because if you're coming in and you do realize, okay, so these mediators, they work for the state. All right. They're not working for you. They're working for the state. It's rare that I've ever heard of a mediator who was truly unbiased. Okay. But if you have reasonable requests and you have law that backs up what your requests are, and you go in and you ask for mediation and you're like, hey, you know, I'm trying to mediate with the district and they're still playing hardball with you, I think that looks really good because, you know, what you requested was a reasonable thing and that you have law to back up your request. It's not like you're just asking for the moon, you're asking for something reasonable. So I think that helps a lot if you make it over to due process. So you had said ESA earlier in another question. Either I said ESA or I said AESA, and I may have meant AESA and said ESA. So if I did, I'm sorry if I'm causing confusion and delay today. Yes, I do talk to myself. Becky was kind of laughing at that. So are you kidding me? Sometimes that's the only time I can have a reasonable conversation where I'm not repeating myself in my house. Like everyone in my house has ADHD. I'm the frontal lobe for everybody. You'll notice in the background, occasionally you'll hear something go off and it's talking in the background. I actually have an Amazon Echo. So my Amazon Echo, I programmed at certain times to say certain things. So this way I'm not constantly reminding my children to do things like it's time to get ready for bed or it's time to eat dinner. Like this is the final call for dinner, right? It's time to get ready for bed. It's time to brush your teeth. It's time to go to bed for story time. So all of these reminders are already preset on my Amazon. And so I know we really haven't talked about that, but it is something, especially if you have a child who has intellectual disabilities. So Joseph is considered to have intellectual disabilities, my son Joseph. And I think it's really important to teach them how to utilize technology to help them, remind them to do things and to take care of set tasks. And I think using something like an Echo is a great way to kind of help make that happen. So Philtonia said, in my state, it's called an IEA, but they make you waive your idea rights if you take the grant. Yes. Did you hear that? It's about to go off again. Here it goes.
I'm reminding you. All children get ready for bed and brush teeth.
So you can hear the Amazon say, I'm reminding you, all children get ready for bed and brush your teeth. So this is how I help take care of some of these things. And then I have visual schedules to help remind my children like what it is that they're supposed to do. So something to keep in mind, because I'll tell you what, as a parent, it can be very taxing to be the frontal lobe to a lot of people, you know, to have them like remember and keep them organized and on track. So why not utilize technology, right? And to have that help you out. So I know a lot of people don't like these kind of devices because, there is concern about privacy and it listening in and et cetera. And I agree. I mean, those are, I think, legitimate concerns. But my sanity is worth more to me to do that. Not to mention the fact that, if that goes off, I don't really care. Because, if there are people wiretapping and eavesdropping me, they're going to be really bored listening to what I have going on in my house. Anyway, so Feltonia is right. She said for her state, you do have a school voucher program, but when you do that, you are signing away your right to FAPE, right? A free, appropriate public education. So it is really good to make sure you fully understand what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're signing away, and is that going to be okay? Okay. So for me, same thing. I had to sign away FAPE when I took the ESA scholarship in Arizona. Now, I wasn't particularly concerned about this because at any given time, I can reject it, right, and go back into the school system. So that was one reason I wasn't concerned. And, I'm a special education advocate. I don't mind doing that, and I don't mind going back to the schools and fighting with them over the IEP if I need to. Now, what I did find a benefit and why we joined the program is because with that money, and Arizona is unusual in the fact it pays a considerable amount of money, because what it does is it takes 90% of the funds it would have given the public school and then turns around and gives it to the parent. So I have control over it. I can use that money and then either pay to send my children to a private school, or I can take that money and then educate my children at home. And so that is what I opted to do. I opted to educate them at home because Joseph, due to his severely impaired processing speed, he really isn't set and really not able to go to school. James, on the other hand, has what they called splintered skills. He's 2E, so twice exceptional and gifted in some ways. And so with him being exceptional and really high in some areas, it's very difficult to educate him in a standard classroom because he's just so far above and beyond in some places. So again, I really like this idea of homeschooling, and then I got to control like what's going on, what are they learning, how are they learning it, with the pace at which they're learning. And then I can use the money, and I do use it for this. And that's why there was all the ruckus earlier, because I pay for therapy and therapists to come into my house. And so what you were hearing earlier was a music therapist who is working with my children. I have a special education teacher who comes in several days a week, and she works with my children too on reading and writing and math. And that's been great because these people come in, and so that kind of leaves me with the fun stuff of like art. And then we also get to do other music stuff. And then the children like history. And then though they all hate it, we do reading. But, all the kind of like the really despised subjects, because my children all have specific learning disabilities in reading and math, like that's pawned off onto other people and I let them teach my children those subjects. So this way I don't have to be the meanie. So it's been really great. I've really enjoyed it. And I think you can use the program very successfully if you can have connections and are able to kind of go out and find resources. So I'm able to do that just because it's easy for me to do, with my husband being a public school teacher here in the state. So Terry was just saying, isn't AESA something else? So yes, it is Every Student Succeeds Act. And again, I have information in there. I think if you look in the group and you search like hashtag EESA, I think that's what I have it under. So you can look there and see if I have the information. If not, I know I do have information in the group, or if not, I know I can find it again. So, because I have found it. So Feltonia was just saying, I love that, getting an Amazon Echo. Yeah, so Amazon Echo, Amazon Dot, it's a lot cheaper. It's not as loud. Okay, so that is a warning. The speaker is not as good and it's not as loud. So the Echoes can get much louder. It can be very loud, actually. And then there's, Google, and they have their Google Assist, I think. Google, it's something, Google Home. My son was just saying Google Home. So they have Google Home, and there's all kinds of other devices that potentially you could utilize to use as assistive technology to help your family like stay on track and stay on focus. So, so Jessica was saying, please say again which level of politician you approach to request a congressional inquiry, your state senator or U.S. senator, state level congressional people. So they can investigate people at the state level. They can investigate state agencies, right? So it's a way to get something done is to go and request these congressional inquiries. Also, just state politicians, like I said, in general, they're a lot more invested in getting your vote. And so if you are active politically in your state, they will absolutely pay attention to what you have to say. So it's well worth it to be politically active, especially at your state level, okay? So Becky was saying, oh my God, I love the Amazon idea with the speaker. Yes, seriously, best thing ever. And then this way, I'm not bossing my children around. Technology is. So Philtonia was saying, in my state, they only give $5,000 to $6,000. Did you get more in your state? Absolutely. So in Arizona, like I said, they base it off of your child's primary eligibility for special education if your child has an IEP or 504. So typically, the average student gets exactly what you were just saying, $5,000 to $6,000. In our state, it tends to be about $6,000 to $6,500. In Arizona, one of the highest paying, I guess, disabilities is autism. So for the primary eligibility on the IEP, so the first one that's listed needs to say autism. And so for that, you get about $26,000 a year per child. And then my son, Joseph, has an eligibility category that's special to my state, which is MDSSI. So that's multiply disabled with severe sensory impairment. And that is because my son, Joseph, is considered to have autism, educationally speaking, but also medically. So he has autism, he has ataxic cerebral palsy, he qualifies as visually impaired because he is blind in his one eye, high risk of losing vision in his other, plus he has a reduced field of vision in his good eye, and he has eye tracking problems and his eye fatigues. So like all of that rolled together, he definitely qualifies for visual impairment. He's considered orthopedically impaired. And because he is also visually impaired, that's what gives him the MDSSI qualification. So for that one, I get about $32,000 a year to direct in for his education. So it's a significant amount of money. And with that, let me think, I get about $80,000 from the state in any given year, like over the course of a year. So they break it up and they give it to us quarterly. And I have to report quarterly. And in that quarterly report, it takes me a while. I won't lie. It takes me, I would say, anywhere between 8 to 10 hours for me to address everything in their reports that I have to submit online. And it's well worth it because the state gives me a large chunk of money that I can then turn around and pay for therapy. And for therapy, that includes HIPAA therapy, aquatic therapy, that includes gymnastics therapy, martial arts therapy. There's a large list of things that are considered therapy, along with the, being able to hire in tutors like the special education teacher to work with my children. And then you can also buy curriculum and participate in online learning programs. So there's a lot of ways potentially in which you can use the money. But like I said, this is 90% of the money the state was going to give the school district anyways. And you know what? The parents use it more efficiently. And part of that is because we don't have to pay, state retirement, state taxes. When we pay the tutors, they're paid as independent contractors, so they're responsible for the taxes. So most of them are paid pretty well. They're paid at $50 to $60 an hour. And we're allowed to do that because, you know, we do realize like they have to take those taxes and stuff out of the money that we're giving them. Anyway, so that'll help explain a little bit about how Arizona's program works. So Feltonia was just saying, she was like, wow, it's awesome that you have teachers come in. Absolutely, because that saves me from killing my children, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, why can't I teach them? You know, I taught my other kids how to do math and how to write, and, you know, I couldn't teach them. And so it was great to be able to hire kind of professional help, right? A certified teacher to come in and work with my children. And when she had problems too, then it was easy to say, okay, it's not me. It's not how I'm doing. It has nothing to do with me and how I've been educating them. What it has to do is it's their learning disability. You know, their learning disability is just that significant, right? So let's see. So Terry was saying, I added a speaker to the dot from Five Below. I'm not sure what that means. All right. So Feltonia was saying, what? Yes, I know. Like the state, it's significantly more money than most of the children get in other states. And she said, I have 2 with autism. I need to move to Arizona. You know what, Feltonia? I tell people that all the time. I literally had hopped from state to state. Okay. So if you have done that, you are not alone. When I initially worked for the Bureau of Land Management as a geologist. I know, right? You probably have a hard time believing that, but I did. I worked for the federal government, and I worked for the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, as a geologist. And that's when I got pregnant with my quadruplets. And I left there where I was. So that was Las Vegas, Nevada. And I headed back home where my family is and where I grew up and where I was raised, which is Huntsville, Alabama. So I went back home to Alabama, and I had my children in Alabama. So we lived there for 2 years after I had my children, and I really didn't feel like anybody was taking me seriously there. I mean, I was talking to all these doctors, and they're all sort of blowing me off, and I'm like, hey, my child is having a lot of problems. They're still blowing me off. Early intervention was okay, but I had issues with them too. That's where I learned kind of this difference, right, between medical and educational therapy. Because the therapists in the early intervention were like, you know, well, you need to work with your kids and you need to do this. And you have, you know, we're just here to show you. And I was like, well, this is great to know. But that's not going to happen because I have 3 little ones who get fed every 3 hours around the clock. Like, I need to sleep in there too. And I really don't have time to sit there and do therapy with them. So after they got to be 2, I'm like, we need to move. We're not getting what we need here. And so we moved back to Nevada. So my husband was able to find a job, but then I found out like we had no problem finding therapists there. There are several schools in Las Vegas, Nevada that were churning out therapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, which is great. But I couldn't find doctors. So there were literally, when I lived there 6 years ago, there were two pediatric endocrinologists, and for the whole Las Vegas greater area. So 1.5 million people, there were 2 pediatric endocrinologists. One took Medicaid and had a 1-year waiting list. And then the second one did not take Medicaid, and he had a 3-month waiting list. And so I paid quite a bit of money out of pocket because my husband was a school teacher there in Las Vegas also. And their medical insurance, terrible. And so I had to pay quite a bit to take my son there. But, you know, the wait list was so much shorter. I didn't care. I was going to come up with the money one way or another. Anyways, though, it was really tough to get into doctors. It was really tough to find specialists. The amount of state services, so respite and that kind of thing, I really wasn't getting any help. Just altogether, it was very difficult to get help. So my husband and I separated for a year because having children with disability is incredibly taxing on a marriage. If you have not experienced this yourself, consider yourself to be incredibly blessed, because having a child with disabilities is just a huge burden on a marriage. And, you know, I hate to say it that way, but it can be, because it can be very difficult. I think in particular for men to sort of accept the fact that the child has a disability, right? So I just, it was tough when my husband up and left, because I didn't have a job at the time. I was working on finishing my master's degree, but I hadn't quite complete. I had one class left to finish my master's degree that I had started online just because I needed some kind of stimulation at raising my children. So I applied for everything I could possibly find, and Arizona Department of Transportation called and wanted me to come work for them as an environmental planner. So that is what I did. I accepted the job in Arizona, and I moved here with no friends, no family, no nothing. I had no supports, no help, no nothing. My family thought I was crazy. They were very upset with me. They wanted me to come back home to Alabama, and I was like, there's no way, because professionally there really isn't much in the way of work for me there. Mom's like, no problem, just go work over at the dollar store. No, Mom, I don't have a master's degree practically and want to go work at the dollar store. That's just not going to happen, and they don't want to hire me because I'm overeducated and they don't want me. So no, I stuck to my guns. Thankfully, my dad helped me out, or we would have been homeless. I had one of, I think she's also a member of this group, but somebody had been texting me, and I gave them my personal blog and kind of let them read through that. And they're like, oh my God, I don't know how you did it, with the transportation, you're going homeless. And she was like, you just reading your blog made me stressed. And I was like, well, yes, it was very stressful, but I try not to go back and sort of relive and revisit that part of my life. We were just watching the Robinsons the other day, and I loved the quote at the end where it was from Walt Disney saying, we'll kind of look back to the past, but we keep moving forward. And I told my husband, I said, I look at that as like, that's my personal motto. My personal motto is I keep moving forward. This goes back to what I was telling you earlier about perseverance, right? Don't give up. So don't give up. Keep moving forward. And so that's what I did. I moved forward. My husband had left me. He is still in Las Vegas. I came here to Arizona. Thankfully, I met a couple of ladies. They helped me out, and I was able to find some lady who was a sitter who was able to watch my children for me, that I could start my job. And though I did have a lot of problems with that, that's another story all right there. It was a very trying time, but I didn't give up. And and I don't know if you're religious, but I will tell you that, I am, and my husband is now. But, thankfully kind of God intervened and sort of brought us back together. I mean, my husband and I have been married almost now 20 years. And matter of fact, January 1st of 2020, we will be celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary. So we have served each other since our children have been born. They are 11. We have literally gone to court, got papers, and have served each other 4 times. This is how stressful having a child with a disability is. 4 times we've served each other with divorce papers. But we did manage to get our act together. Part of it is because we do have 3 children who have special needs, 2 of which have obviously disabilities that they probably will need us to take care of them for the rest of our lives. And we knew that we wouldn't be able to get rid of one another. It just wasn't going to happen. So we both came to the agreement that we needed to figure out what it is that was going wrong. We needed to fix it, and we needed to get back together and just work it out. Because we were going to deal with each other until we died. So thankfully, God had kind of intervened and helped, and everything is really good now. So, because I know that was part of, and reading my personal blog, she was really upset. And I was like, no, things are much better now. So, and that's the other thing too, no matter how bad life seems, how dark things seem, don't give up, persevere. Okay. Sorry. You're a little teary-eyed, but it's so important. Persevere, because in that dark moment, it can be really hard to see what the future may hold. But it's so important to hang on, because you don't know what the future holds, right? Persevere. So, because the future can be amazing. And I would hate to think that I hadn't persevered. And then if so, I would have missed all of this opportunity that's going on now. And that would have been, I think, very tragic. Sorry. If you know me, like, I hardly ever cry, but like, it's a tough subject for me. Because I have been through a lot. And I know a lot of people don't realize that. But part of it is I don't tell people. I don't dwell on it. I don't think about it. In my day-to-day life, like, I don't worry about it. And part of that is because I just don't want to go there. It was in the past. It happened in the past. I want to leave it in the past. I have better things to look forward to, right? I want to focus on that. I want to focus on where it can be. I want to focus on all of you buying memberships so I can give out 10,000 Reid Scholarships. That's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the cool stuff that I can, get to do. That goes with my children. I don't focus on their disabilities. What do I focus on? I focus on what they can do. What can they do? Joseph is intellectually delayed. He's a hot mess. He has cerebral palsy. There's visual impairment, all this stuff going on with him. But you know what? That boy's got a memory like a steel trap. So it's really fascinating to watch him because he gets obsessed about things. We have an Ion Pathfinder speaker we picked up over at Costco. That boy, he loves noise. I don't know what it is about him. He just, a little louder, the better. And so he wants it just as loud as he can get it. Well, that Pathfinder, that sucker gets loud, okay? We take it to the drive-in and play it like it's loud. He loves that thing. He went on YouTube. He found demo videos of that Pathfinder. He watched them over and over and over again. Now, if we have questions, I ask him, hey, how do we do this with the Pathfinder? How do we plug it up? Where's the information? He sits there and he repeats back that video practically verbatim. He sounds like a little instruction manual. It is the most amazing thing. Well, knowing that, it's a strength. It's his strength. Now, you can utilize that in school, but it's even better because I homeschool him. I have the flexibility, like we touch on educational stuff. And like for him, I focus more on life skill things, right? But for him, what I'm looking for vocationally, I can get started now, even though he's only 11. And so we're looking at playing with snap circuits and doing electrical stuff and having him watch videos in that, or potential do small engine repair or car repair and having him watch videos in that. He loves cars. He thinks it's amazing. He likes gears. He may find that he does really good at like watch repair, right? Anything that he could watch a video and watch it over and over again, he can learn. Knowing that, it's a strength. Why not utilize that? Why not let him pursue a career that could be a well-paying career for him, even though he's disabled? Because we tapped into what is his strength. So don't give up. Keep persevering. Your child, no matter how impaired you think they are, they probably have some strength in there that you can tap into and that they can have a great career, right? So keep forward, keep moving forward, keep pushing forward. Things will get better. All right, sorry. Went on a rant. Okay. So anyways, Philtonia was just saying, she goes, I have to move to Arizona. Please do. And if y'all move to Arizona, come look me up. I'll hang out with you, okay? And she said, both of the children have a primary disability of autism. And then she said, oh my God, my kids are missing out bigly. So it's very funny. So Bree said, you always have such helpful information. Well, thank you. I really try because I understand as a parent who has special needs children, right? We don't have time. I don't have time, especially in the beginning when I'm overwhelmed, right? When your children are young, you're overwhelmed, or you're just new to special education or new kind of to the world of disability. It's overwhelming. There's so much, and there's so many opinions, and there's so much stuff going on. But guess what? It's okay because I'm here and I want to help and likely I have encountered whatever problem it is that you have, because between my 3 children, seriously, we cover a wide span of disabilities. So I have, I'm pretty conversant over a wide span of disabilities. And what I don't know, I'm an excellent researcher, and I can probably find you the information quickly. So let's see. So Becky says, so every state gives money to help homeschoolers sped kids. Absolutely not. Very few states do. So I don't ask me, because I don't know which ones. I haven't found like a good resource that sort of compiled a list. But I know several states have some kind of school voucher program. Now, how the school voucher program, again, it varies by state. Arizona's is kind of very progressive for most states, that they turn that much money over to us parents. And though there is a lot of reporting on our end, and then, we do things wrong, we then have to turn around and pay the money back. So, there's a lot of responsibility that goes on with this, but I think it's well worth it. So I'm down for it. I will take the time to do all of this stuff. So no, not every state does, but if you ever are interested in trying to find out what your state's information is when it comes to school vouchers or a school choice program, let me know, and I will see what I can find and see if I can find that information for you. So Feltonia said, can I send a message to you to find out where's the best place to move to Arizona? Absolutely. And there are a lot of Facebook groups. And anytime you're considering a move, I highly encourage you to look at your local disability Facebook groups. So for example, if you're moving to a major city like Phoenix, right, then you can pretty much put in like Phoenix autism and then go look. So at the top of the page, there's these little subheaders. And then one of them should say groups, and then you click that. And then it should list groups that are in that area. So then scroll through and look. And then whatever one of the largest or 2 largest groups are, just apply and see if they'll let you in. Hooking up kind of with your local group to where you're wanting to move. That is specific to or closely related to your child's disabilities is by far going to give you the best results. And the parents that I have met, many of them are willing to kind of dish out whatever it is. And I think it's fabulous that they do that, because it truly is one of your best resources for information. And that's where I get my information. I look for these local disability groups and I talk to people there. So Philtonia said in Tennessee, which, by the way, I lived in Alabama, as I said, so I know, like the South, it's a tough place when you have a child with a disability. But she said, my state allows you to get home care services. They approved me for 35 hours a week, and I can use the home attendant as an aide in the school setting. So will Arizona Medicaid be the same? So Arizona Medicaid does have a program. It's not quite the same, kind of similar, but also if you come here, do realize too, for ESA, you have to be in the state and you have to have your child in public school for 100 school days here to be able to qualify for the ESA program, unless your child is entering into kindergarten. So how we met that requirement is I used public school online. So that was how I got my children to meet the requirement. And so it is a way that you can use to meet that requirement. So just, be aware and do realize you have to kind of do that whole year in public school, but you can do an online public school if you do not want to enroll your child into like a brick and mortar public school here. So, and it's free, the online, because the online public school isn't free in all states, but here in Arizona it is, and there are 2 of them. So there is some choice there. And then once you get qualified for ESA, you could use that funds if you needed to have an aide attend over at the private school or choose a private school, because there was one of them I was considering sending my children to for a little bit, where what they do is for all the core subjects, they work one-on-one. So 1 teacher to 1 student for all core subjects. And then for therapy. They have like an executive functioning class. I thought that, man, that's amazing. And what a great idea. I just look at it as like it would be like a study skills class, right? But they had this executive functioning class, a yoga class, a therapy of some sort or another. And then maybe that was it. There's 3, maybe there's 4 things. Anyways, that class though is a 6-to-1 ratio. So again, still a very small group setting, but it's, 6 people, enough to interact with, but maybe not overwhelm some children. But often they'll let you send an aide with them and they won't have any issue with that. So Terry's just saying, I'm in Mississippi. Yes, the great state of Mississippi. And that was where my grandparents are from. And I went there a lot. So, and I was born in Tennessee, technically, but grew up in Alabama. So I am a Southern girl. I know I don't sound like it, but I swear to you, I am a Grits and I am a Southern girl. So Becky was just saying, I'm sorry to hear about your husband and you. Glad you both persevered and stuck it out. Yes, we did, but it was tough, but yes, we did. And I was going to say, I think in the end, it was because we both came to that realization. We were stuck with one another. We didn't have any choice. Our children kind of.
All children in bed for story time.
All children in bed for story time. So that, we both realized that we had to raise these 2 children. So it was just easier to kind of get it together instead of dividing our resources and kind of fighting it out, just to go ahead and work out our problems and stick together. All right. So Brie was like, so smart. Love it. And then Becky said, thanks. And I think I'm down at the end of the comments now. Okay. So I know this has been way off topic, what we usually discuss in the evenings, but it does tell you a little bit about me and sort of, where I've been, what I've done, kind of why I know the things that I know. Again, I am not a lawyer and I'm not a doctor. I'm just a mom who I like researching and learning things. And it turns out that in the end, if I could be a professional student, I think I would have been. Like, I love studying and I like researching things. And I probably could have done anything. I probably could have been a doctor or a lawyer had I really chosen to do so. But I don't know. I really like what I do now, right? So I like helping people. And this allows me to do that. So if we don't have any more questions for this evening, I guess we will be wrapping it up because we're kind of right at that hour-and-a-half deadline. So does anybody have any final questions or anything for me this evening? So if while you're thinking about it and typing, I'm going to just one last pitch. So again, wrong way. So AESA.group. And again, for the quarterly bronze membership, we have the promo code AESA April, and that gives you 30 free days to go in and check out our new site, to go, hit up our forum, and you can get full access to all the blog posts. And then you can also just purchase a bronze membership for a year, which is $25. I think that's incredibly inexpensive, and it really helps me not only to fund the Reid Scholarship, but to kind of fund AESA itself, because I am hoping soon, I hope to release, when we do the conference, our new name, because that'll also be right about the start of our new year, and change our name from Arizona Exceptional Students Association to American Exceptional Students Association, because I really want to open up that Reid Scholarship to everyone in the United States. All right. So that was my final pitch here for my new website. And again, does anybody else have any questions? I don't think so. I think we're about it. So if you need me, I will be in the IEP/504 group this evening for a little while. So please ask whatever questions that you may have. Also, like I said, during the day, absolutely, you can catch me over on my website, aesa.group, and find me in the forums. I try to stay there. I'm currently working on a few different projects. One is to get out a new blog post. Really excited to work on this blog post. It is girls and autism. I think it's a really important subject, and it's often very it's overlooked and underappreciated. because often girls are diagnosed 5 years later than their male counterparts. And I think that's a terrible tragedy, because many of the girls that I see tend to suffer from anxiety because of that. And that's a real shame. So, so that's one thing that I'm working on, along with, as Terry said, working on some projects with her to get together, you know, my own kind of information and stuff on SMART goals and what you can do when it comes to working with the school district. So, all right. Well, thank you all so very much. And again, if you have any questions, I will see you guys in the IEP room. All right. Have a good evening. Bye. See you next week.